Let me know when we're ready.
We're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is October the 9th, 2023. We're in council chambers for the Public Safety Committee meeting. And I'm going to call on Councilmember Shealy, who's live with me, and the mayor to start us off with a moment of silence, please.
Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the men and women who serve in public safety, Lord. We thank you for all of the staff that we have here that work under public safety here for the city of Charleston. Lord, we ask for your blessings on the city, on our employees. And Lord, we ask for your blessings in this meeting today. May you open our minds to hear what we should be saying and what we should be doing, Lord. Guide us and help what we do be acceptable in your sight. For it's in your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Shealy, for always putting you on the spot to come through in the clutch. The next item on our agenda is approval of the September 11, 2023 minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
And any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The next item on our agenda is a approval of a memorandum of understanding with the city of North Charleston regarding the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $52,139. And Heather, since you to my immediate left, I presume this is not something you're covering, is that correct?
No.
All right. Who's covering this for us?
Can you all hear me? I'll cover it.
You're gonna have to speak up a lot louder for me, please.
Okay. So yes, the CPD is requesting approval of an MOU with the city of North
And
Charleston.
you need to identify yourself so we make sure the record's clear as well, please.
Andrea Hayward, I'm the grants coordinator at the Charleston Police Department.
Thank you.
Okay, and yes, we're requesting an MOU to access our 2023 Burn JAG funds. We were allocated $52,139, but because North Charleston is acting as the pass-through entity, an MOU is required to access those funds. And this grant will help us outfit 3 of our special operations units with new equipment and to purchase outer carriers for the patrol division.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to ask, it looks like, so there was 3 entities that received this. I guess it's the county, North Charleston, and the city of Charleston. But I guess it wasn't split exactly in thirds because it's showing we had 52,139. Do we know, how was that split or how was that decided? The amount that we received as compared to other entities, I guess.
So allocations are determined by the DOJ FBI reporting. We report our crime rates and statistics to the FBI, and based on crime rates, they will allocate a certain amount of funds to each jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. I'll move for approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Brady, any further questions or comments?
Nope.
Mr. Mayor, anything further you want to add? All right. I'll call for the question. All those in favor of item number 3 for this MOU, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Number 4 is approval to accept an award of $800,000 from the Bureau of Justice Assistance Smart Policing Initiative. Funds will help evaluate the efficiency of CPD's new problem-oriented policing initiative. Who's covering that?
Yes, so this is a grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. The grant will fund a research partnership to evaluate our problem-oriented policing initiative, and it will help expand the department's data analysis capabilities.
Did y'all catch all that? Mr. Mayor, you nodding a little bit, so.
Yeah, I did catch that, and I asked the other day, but I'll ask it again just for public awareness. Get to give us a couple of examples of things that we would be utilizing these funds for.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Jill will cover that for the police department. It'll be under her area of expertise as procedural justice director. So.
Yes, I'm here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for having me. As the chief said, I am Jill Idson, the Procedural Justice and Research Director at the Charleston Police Department. We were very honored to receive this award from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. We applied for it back in May. It was a competitive award. And, having applied for these a few times in my other career duties, I've seen that it's not often that we get these on the first go. So we were very fortunate to be awarded this, but it's a really good project. So generally, the project is really aiming to build upon the foundation that's already been established at the CPD related to community problem-oriented policing. And so what that is it's basically it's an innovative way to address crime problems or place-based areas where there are higher counts of violent property crimes or also traffic crimes. And so what we're doing is we're trying to find collaborative and creative ways, engaging the community and also using a lot of evidence-based practices to try to address areas that the police often deal with a lot. And so in this particular grant, what we're asking to do is to partner with a research partner that will come in and help provide additional training to our command staff and a lot of the officers in our team locations to help identify and then scan problems, develop intelligence, and then find ways to try to effectively reduce crime in those locations, and also thinking about ways to do so that don't involve enforcement related action. So we're thinking outside of the box beyond what would normally be considered an enforcement related problem. Beyond that, a lot of this money will also help the CPD over the long term by improving its data systems. So it'll help improve our reporting capacities, the speed at which we can produce data products, and also additional data products for both internal and external audiences. And beyond that, we will be able to talk about this in depth and use these strategies for the long term to help us, be innovative in how we look at policing in Charleston.
Well, that's true.
That answers your question, Mr. Mayor.
It does, and I would just like to thank Jill and everyone involved for being attentive to apply for it in the first place, and congratulations on being successful. It sounds like it'll be a great benefit to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hitson, it looks like, congratulations as well and great work. Thank you. It looks like there may be a good bit of follow-up work to be done after we receive this. Do we have somebody assigned that will be in charge of that follow-up work? And what is some of that, I guess, that we need to do?
Sure. So I believe that I'm the point person on the grant in terms of the procedures and the normal operations for the CPD. I'll be working with our grants manager, Andrea Hayward, who already addressed you, on keeping track of just making sure that we perform all of the reporting for BJA. A lot of our work on this will be in collaboration with the University of Cincinnati, who was a subrecipient of this grant. He was the entity that helped us create the application. And so he is basically going to be the lead on coming in and training our staff in best practices related to problem-oriented policing. He's also going to come down with members of his team to help provide technical assistance for us as we kind of work the problems, identify hot spots or problem areas that the CPD wants to address. And then I think most interestingly, from my perspective, he's also going to do a rigorous scientific evaluation of how well our strategies work. So that includes both a process evaluation, and that looks at kind of how well the strategies were rolled out, what people's perceptions of them were as a result, and then an outcome evaluation, which is basically, did what we do have an impact? And since he's going to be involved in this project with us from the beginning, he will be able to help us design the strategy around the assessment to really be able to answer those questions about whether what we did worked. And beyond that, we also hope to be able to sustain this project by looking at policies and procedures that we can adopt over the long term.
Great, thank you. I would move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Brady, any questions?
Second.
And before we do that, and maybe I didn't hear you say this, Jill, while there is no match required, we are anticipating additional costs. What are those additional costs?
Yes, sir. Yes. So since we are going to be working to improve our data infrastructure, there will be maintenance costs for the different data system advancements that we procure with this grant. There is an additional maintenance estimate of around $21,800 per year to help us maintain these systems. However, the big amount of the upfront cost is several hundreds of $1,000s that we're getting from BJA to help us build those systems. So our ongoing maintenance is quite minimal compared to the upfront cost that we will not be responsible for paying.
Right, and you said that was about $22,000 per year.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Anybody have any follow-up questions based on what I just asked? No, okay. I think we have a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 4, and Heather, I think this is going to be under your bailiwick. This is a proposed second amendment to the external review and assessment agreement between the city and the University of South Carolina to allocate another $26,563 for additional funding regarding our internal audit. So Heather, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is the second amendment to the contract that involves the assessment by the third-party assessors of the racial bias audit of the Charleston Police Department. You will recall we had an initial contract that was extended out to October 31st of this year. That deadline remains the same, and the contract is on track to be completed by that date. You will recall the last time I spoke at the Public Safety Committee meeting regarding the contract, I let you know that there was a pause that was put into the contract. That pause was put on for the purpose of meeting with our general contractor, just to discuss some issues that remain in the contract, particularly funding issues. We did meet with our general contractor. We also met with a subcontractor, and we were able to work out some of those funding issues, and that's what you see in this particular amendment. And the remaining duties have been outlined in the contract as well. And again, it's set to be completed on time. And if you have, let me know if you have any questions about that. And I would also like to give you an update of where CPD stands on its the terms that they have to fulfill in the contract.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? All right, let me just go back with you on this. So this is to make sure that we're still on track with the receiving a report regarding the internal audit. And that's to be made sometime at the end of this month, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, it's October 31st. Right as it stands now, all the parties are completing the information gathering stage. For CPD's part, CPD has conducted a law enforcement forum, which was completed Friday, which involved a meeting between many law enforcement representatives across the state to kind of give their feedback as to possible issues within their departments. And it really is confidential, but that's part of the audit that will go into the report. And Dr. Kale is the one who put that together with the help of CPD recruiting. That has been completed. Additionally, there were some 3 interviews of our subject matter experts for the department that needed to be conducted. Those have been completed. And there's a survey that was put together by CPD and CPAC as part of the contract. It contains a lot of analysis. The analysis has been completed, and there's just a few items left on that. And the next step really is the parties getting together, the contractors getting together and putting this information in a nice draft final report that can have a final review, and then that we will have the presentations. We're now working out deadlines, dates, and presentations at this point. But yes, it's on track for October 31st.
I'm just going through my calendar. Our next city council meeting is the 24th. Yeah, tomorrow's our city council meeting. Then the one after that's the 24th, and which would make our regular schedule public safety meeting on the 23rd. But you're not going to be ready by then.
I'm not certain it'll be ready by then, in all fairness.
Okay. So then the next time is our first meeting in November is the 14th. So we would need to be prepared for a presentation by the 13th. Unless we call a special off the books sort of meeting just to handle that. And I'm looking at the mayor. I think probably, Mr. Mayor, we may want to just set that aside as a special meeting, but unless you've got a different view on that.
Well, even though the report is due on the 31st, I'm sure our police department would like to have a little time to review it. It seems to me that the regular meeting there on the 13th would be just fine to have a report on this.
Okay. Right. So we'll just give everybody sort of a advance notice of that meeting. That's sort of the time frame we're looking at. There's gonna be a lot of other activity going on between now and then, obviously. So let's shoot for the 13th if we can do that. Unless there's something happens that for some reason we get this thing done a little bit earlier and there's the opportunity to present it before the 13th. I appreciate that. And also, I intentionally wanted to have this meeting in person because we're going to receive the update from the police annual report. That meeting will be held live. I expect everybody who's going to be a presenter to be present for that meeting. I think that's critically important that we have a good showing of people actually showing up in council chambers for that meeting or wherever we decide to have it held. So those who are interested parties involved in any aspect of this report, I would expect them to be physically present for that report. Okay. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Councilmember Brady, you're behind it. Any further discussion?
Nope, I'm good.
Councilmember Shealy, Mayor, anything further on this item, this last item before we get to the annual report on the $23,000? I mean, $26,000.
Right.
All good? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes got it. All right. Heather, thanks for that update and appreciate. But and by the way, just for the record, our chief is with us, Fire Chief. Welcome, Chief Courier, for being here. Appreciate your attendance. All right, Interim Chief Walker, I guess. You want to lead us off with a presentation regarding the annual 2022 report?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so this, we'll tee this off. This is a combination of both the annual report and the OIA report, Office of Internal Affairs report for 2022. Both those reports are generated by our Office of Professional Standards. So Captain Cretella will take the lead. These reports, both of these reports, we'd like to have them done by the end of the second quarter, but unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, one being the death of Chief Reynolds and the transition period, we're just getting around to presenting it to both public safety. So I encourage you, if you have any questions during the presentation, this will be a collaboration of both the data from the crime and also our reports of use of force and things like that. Please stop us during the presentation and we'll be glad to answer those questions and tackle them while they're fresh instead of waiting till the end. So Tony, with that, I think we're DC Thompson, you want to kick us off with this chart here?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. What you're looking at here is the crime statistics, the final report for 2022. Take a moment to digest that. We were very successful in a lot of areas last year with reducing crime. I will tell you with all the things that you'll hear about today, just keep in mind that our number one focus is the reduction and the prevention of crime, especially violent crime. And so in 2022, you see those numbers there. We were successful in most all areas. We still struggle with our motor vehicle thefts and overall theft from motor vehicles year to year. We were slightly up in 2022, as you see there with motor vehicle thefts. A lot of it is, not victim blaming, but just making sure that we're keeping our cars locked. We're taking the keys out of the car, and all of us as citizens are doing our part to reduce that. But that is ongoing. As I mentioned, over the years, there are a lot of programs that we utilize at the department. One being the bait operation, where we have bait vehicles and mopeds and all kind of different things that we use to try to reduce that number. We also do a lot of media pushes to remind people to keep their vehicles locked. Like I said earlier, keys out of the car. But that's on us. We've got to continue to work there in that property crime area to reduce those issues. Any questions on this slide before we move forward?
Yes, I don't see anything on here regarding weapons and drug related.
That's the next slide, Councilman.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have a question on this particular slide? All right, we can move on to the next one.
Give me 1 minute. My computer's frozen. I'm trying to move to the next slide. All right, I'm gonna try to stop sharing for a minute and reload this file.
Sometimes a good kick makes it a lot better.
There we go.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so what you're looking at now, there are different numbers from the previous slide. This is a screenshot from our weekly ops report. This is the report, the week 52 of last year. So if you compare it to the previous slide, it's the numbers are different. The previous slide are the final numbers. And the reason those numbers change is that you may have, just for instance, a robbery that after the investigation is completed, say in like February or March. That's why Chief Walker mentioned that we wait till the second quarter. Maybe circumstances change and that changes to a different crime. So there is a bit of a period after the last week of the year that our detectives and investigators work through all the different crimes. And so some of them are reclassified, up or down, depending on the circumstances. But this is the what we look at weekly. And I'll go through real briefly and explain what you're looking at and then open it up for some questions. So this is our weekly OPSTAT report that we look at. Just as a reminder, the command staff and others meet weekly every Wednesday to go over our crime initiatives, our crime fighting initiatives. And that this document here is further broken down into teams, 6 patrol teams. Those are broken down. The same numbers that you see there is broken down team wise. So we go team by team, look at trends across the teams, overall city issues, what's going on in neighborhood jurisdictions. So take a look at that going down through there. I will tell you that looking at 2023, obviously nothing, we still got a few more months. We're down in property overall, the non-violent, up slightly about 2% in violent crime. So no big changes. We got a few more months left, but no big changes to 2023. Going down the list, Councilman Shade, you had asked where it says other crimes at the bottom. So you have drug violations. So years ago, we started tracking how many drug arrests we're making. It could be in there. There's a whole lot of things that would have it classified as a drug violation, but tracking those, because there is a trend between drugs and guns and violent crime. So it's helpful for us to take a look at that weekly, monthly, however we need to take a look and compare across the board so that we can continue to reduce those crime numbers and the fear of crime. The weapons law violation, the next one, that category. So if you get caught with a unlawful carry of a weapon, it's classified as a weapons law violation. But also the one that we really focus on is, so say an officer gets a call or gets a call for shots fired and there's only shell cases on the ground. There's no damage, no property damage, no victims that come forward. We are tracking those and we are, going through, those are assigned to a detective because there will be a nexus later on between us or another agency based on those shell casings or any other evidence that we find at a scene. So we've gotten a lot better over the years of classifying those, getting those assigned to detectives and doing a thorough follow-up investigation like we do with other crimes. On the bottom there, we're still
Just like over here. I'll sneak up on me a little bit.
On the bottom there, you'll see that we are still tracking the firearms stolen from vehicles and unlocked vehicles. I will say, we did speak on this, I think, earlier in the year on public safety, but for this year, for 2023, I always take a moment to thank the public, our citizens. We are, for that number of stolen from unlocked vehicles, we're down almost 2% in 2023. So that was a big number in 2022 with leaving guns in unlocked vehicles, and you know, through all the efforts and the public outreach, that number is going down.
All right, well, don't go back. Let's see if anybody has a, Councilmember Brady, any questions on this slide before we proceed?
Nope, I'm good.
There.
So, Dustin, if I may ask, where you show those little black bars of the 5-year range, like on that first top left of the chart where it goes up to 500, does that mean that in the month of January, over that 5-year range, you had a month with as many as 500 incidents? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, Captain
Yes.
Berger, can you explain that chart just a little bit better? He explains it better than I do. You mind?
Sure. Yes, sir, that's generally correct. This is total number of incidents, no, not just the incidents listed on the screen there as our op stack prime. So this is total number of incidents. So it could be just total number of incident reports written, because you see several months have 500 there, but you'll see the dash line there for 2021 is right there around 150, 170, we'll say. That was what we're comparing it to for last year. So that could be changes in reporting processes and those types of things that create those bigger numbers. But the black bar does show the numbers from 2017 all the way up to this year, just to show us a range there to see if we're trending lower or higher than where we were in the past. So
Right.
that January number, we're lower than where we were last year, and we're on the low end of the last 5 years.
Yeah, it seems significantly lower than the 5-year range.
Yeah.
And
Yes, sir.
but that's why I was trying to just clear in my mind whether that figure of 500 meant like a cumulative over those 5 years, or there was a year that we had that many incidents in the month of January.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That wasn't yet a yes/no question. What is
The-
that a addition of those 5 years altogether that gets to 500, or is that there was a single year that had 500 incidents? Is that
There was a single year that had more than 500 incidents in the month of
Month of
January.
January, or
I
it's-
see.
And looking
That's
at
what I
2023,
thought.
it was probably 2017 because
I
it's not that
just-
high for this year.
Right. So again, if you look at the blue versus the highest peak from the 5-year range, it's a significant reduction. Seems to me, but that's the way it looks. Thank you.
So
and-
I have a few clarification comments as well. On the lower chart where you have weekly summary. You see what I'm talking about? All right. So weekly summary, is that for a specific week? You're not identifying the specific week.
No, it's for the week. We have these reports and these meetings every week. So those numbers in that column reflects the week in question that we're currently addressing.
So I just so that's clear, are we talking about the week of October
This was the end of the year.
or the end of the year? That's what,
Yeah.
it's not, doesn't.
This is a snapshot of last year. This is the end of the year, so we can capture the data from that January 1 to December 25th.
Okay.
But
All right.
that was during the week of December.
Right, all right, just because it's not mentioned there, I presume that's what it meant. I just want to.
Yes, sir.
We were on the same page. And under the, and I've seen this before, and I should have made this comment probably a while back. Under your nonviolent, where you have burglary, breaking and entering, those of us who do criminal work understand breaking and entering may mean breaking and entering a motor vehicle, but you reference this as breaking and entering as into a residence.
That's strictly referring to burglary of residents' businesses. So motor
Businesses
vehicle
are-
break-ins are classified separate in the motor vehicle theft from motor vehicles.
That would not include breaking and entering into a motor vehicle. That would be
No,
a
sir.
separate- That'd be a separate non-violent property.
Yes, sir.
Then that's not necessarily reflected on here.
Theft from a motor vehicle. That's under the nonviolent, the third line down, theft from a motor vehicle is vehicle break-ins.
Okay, all right. And then and I think this is sort of covered by this, but under the firearms stolen from vehicles, you're not double counting firearms stolen from vehicles regarding weapon law violations. Those are two separate.
Two separate.
Okay. That's what I figured. That's one to make. I didn't want to presume that. I just want to make sure we were clear on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, please ask as many questions. We just want clarity, and especially for the general public, so they know how we capture this information. So ask away.
So, Mr. Chairman, just following up on your distinction there, the stuff from motor vehicles, you show a number 716. Now, a good many of those were theft from motor vehicles that were unlocked, correct? That's a total theft, but you're not breaking down there how many were locked versus unlocked.
No, sir, not in this chart, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
And just, while on that same subject, Mr. Mayor, are the terms that we're using here the universal terms that other agencies use? Because it sort of does not match with the South Carolina law as to the classification of some of these. Because there's a big distinction there that you pointed out between a forcible entry into a motor vehicle versus an unlocked car, someone just open and grabbing, I guess is a way of saying it. But there is a distinction in making that, even though it's still nonviolent, it is still a theft, but there's also a destruction element to it as well. But what y'all are telling me, Chief, is that these are the universal terms that you have to plug in for national statistics as well.
Yes, sir.
So not to beat this horse to death, but I think if you reported that distinction separately, like you do with the firearms stolen, that it would further help our communications effort with our citizens to keep their cars locked. If you showed how many of those thefts were in fact from unlocked cars. So if y'all could provide that not only on this report, but maybe start doing that in the future, it would be a good communication tool.
Yes, sir. For the purpose of what we investigate, it don't change the investigation, but for the purpose of reporting out, we can make that distinction as far as unlocked vehicles. We do track that data. But like I say, for the purpose of reporting, if we caught someone breaking in, it will be classified just the way we got it broken down, but duly noted.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Any other questions on this screen? All right. Yeah. Okay, you can move on to the, before we get there, we don't report this, and as long as I've been on public safety, I don't recall seeing this. But are we tracking the status of our cases we make in either general sessions court or in federal court? The resolution of those cases?
Yes, sir. That's one of the areas, DC Weiss and he's over the Central Investigations Bureau, especially cases that's produced out of there, most of our more violent cases. Yes, sir, we do.
But we don't report that out.
No, sir.
That may be beneficial as well, just to see where we're tracking with pending cases. And those are, I understand, these are non-municipal level
Yes.
events, so that we don't have much, we have some control, but not the level of control we have in municipal court if they're in federal court or the Court of General Sessions, which may be a very helpful tool as well, just to see where we stand with those sort of things.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right.
Thanks,
Next one.
Councilman. All right, we're gonna move into Captain Cortello. This is gonna come strictly from the Internal Affairs annual report, and this captured that data. So Tony, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to come off camera, but for some reason it's frozen, so I'm not going to touch it because PowerPoint's actually working. So once again, this is Captain Cortella. I oversee our internal affairs unit. And the biggest takeaway from this slide is showing that our roughly estimated public interactions was 238,099 in 2022. And the significance of that from our end is when we talk about use of force incidents, is that we only used force 331 times within all those calls for service or report calls or traffic stops. And that represents 0.13% of those interactions. So once again, just to reiterate that out of the 238,000 interactions, we used force roughly 331 times. To go a little bit further into that, 86% of that time, we used our hands. And that could be whether it was a push, it was a shove, or a takedown move, but 86% of the times, we used our hands. And to break that down even further, that out of those use of force incidents, we deployed our OC spray 2 times, our taser 6 times, we deployed our K9 9 times, and we had 0 firearms discharged in the year 2022. So in terms of use of force, anybody have any questions in reference to that?
Okay. One thing that's really interesting when you look particularly at the number of arrests does not necessarily correlate with the number of crimes. And I presume that this is including misdemeanor level offenses when you have
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
you have 4,451 arrests, and that's nowhere near, if you look at the other slide dealing with violent crimes and non-violent crimes. I don't think you added all that up, you'd get to 4,451 arrests. So I presume a lot of that is municipal level charges.
Yes, sir. So even a uniform traffic ticket will be constituted as an arrest, even if it's not a physical arrest.
So that would be a moving traffic violation versus a and including a courtesy summons.
Courtesy summons.
All right, so you can, including that 4,451, a speeding ticket related offense. Is that a yes? Y'all checking.
Sorry, I'm trying to come off mute here. Yeah, yes, that would be.
Would that, can we clarify that a little bit better? Because that seems to be something that's misleading when you talk about arrest. Our interpretation of arrest is somebody is physically taken into custody.
Yes, we could break that down for you further and give you a follow-up for this, and just maybe different categories to break that down, sir. Yes, we can do that.
I mean, I guess the purpose of all this is to show the level of interaction between the police department and the community and citizens.
So yes, I did make a note, and we could, like I said, we'll break that down for you and give you an update, at the proper time, if that works for you.
Okay. All right, no other questions from any? We can move on to the next slide then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of our administrative investigation, these are our complaints that come in. And to kind of dissect this, just first is we had a total of 38 complaints that came into the Charleston Police Department last year. And those 38 complaints were actually worked either within the Internal Affairs Office or the teams. And those complaints range anywhere from rudeness to maybe an officer having a vehicle collision at a high rate of speed, or to maybe a significant allegation that, maybe an officer lost a prisoner's property. He left it on the roof of his car and drove off, which it's unacceptable, but does happen from time to time. So out of those 38 cases, 31 of those cases were sustained, which means that the department found that the officer had some culpability or liability in that and violated policy. And that's roughly 81%. And, when you look at the internal versus the external complaints, there's obviously more internal complaints than external. And we attribute that to us holding our officers to a high accountability. And if we see a problem, that we want to address it sooner rather than later. Now, the back end of this is a complaint called a supervisory complaint intake, and that is at the lower level. And that could be someone just calling to say, I saw officer driving unit 509 and I thought they were speeding, but there is nothing to suggest that they were speeding or we have any proof from that. But we'll actually take those complaints, we'll log them into our IA Pro system and document them in there. And those are our less serious complaints. And for 2022, we had 193 of those type of complaints, and 68 of those were actually sustained, which means that when the citizens brought them to our attention, we went back and either looked at CAD data or body worn camera, and we said, yes, they did violate a policy. And that's roughly 35% of those supervisory complaints that actually came internal. So once again, when you look at that number of the 193 complaints versus our total interaction of the 238,000, that's less than 2% of all this of our citizen interactions where they're having some negative connotation with the Charleston Police Department. And once again, I'd like to attribute that to our hiring, of who we're hiring and how we're training our officers, that we do have high standards, but also to our command stuff of holding our officers accountable, which is obviously extremely important at this day and age. Any questions in reference to our internal affairs section?
Any members from the committee have any questions? No, sir. Move on.
All right, we're going to move on to the racial bias audit. As you know, there were 72 initial findings, and there's 72 recommendations with 48 findings into 5 different sections. To date, we've addressed 98.5%, and the last outstanding percentage is a third-party audit review, which we are currently under contract for. But that is the latest information I have in reference to that. Any questions in reference to the audit?
Any questions, Mr. Mayor?
Maybe a comment rather than a question, because when you say you completed or addressed 98.5%, my understanding was about half of the items are ongoing, things that we decided just by the nature of the recommendation or year to year, they're not one and done kind of thing. So I think when we report out, we ought to acknowledge that.
Yes, sir, I'll just go to that.
And Mr. Mayor, and also for the record, and like I say, we do have a third-party assessment. When we say 98.5%, I equate it to like homework, turning it in to a professor. The assessment could say, well, yeah, y'all did address it, but we still think y'all need to go a little bit further. So those numbers can change based on this assessment, and that's exactly why we do a third-party assessment. So just want to at least bring that and put that on the record at the conclusion of the third-party assessment. We could have some more recommendations that come forth.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next up will be DC Thompson, and he'll talk about patrol.
So put these 3 points on there because this is what we get a lot of questions about every year. Obviously, like I said earlier, our focus is on crime. But the first bullet point there, I'll just mention that Jill mentioned it earlier, Dr. Edison mentioned it earlier, but really building on our problem-solving efforts in 2022 and in 2023. We started with the University of Cincinnati in 2021, working with Dr. Haberman there, and we brought him in, and he did a lot of command staff training on down to some of our sergeants. And so just building off that year after year, you might have heard me say it before. We get the question all the time: Are we a community-oriented policing agency, and do we problem solve? And when you say yes, do you have the documentation to back that up? Do you have the training? Do you have everything that you need to actually, solve these problems and not just say that we're doing those? So it's been a focus in 2022 and in 2023 with our patrol divisions, not only addressing crime, but you may have, for instance, a particular park, the James Island County Park. We had a lot of car break-ins over the year after year, same kind of circumstances. And are we really doing anything to fix that problem? Lighting, signage, public awareness, that type of thing. So We did go through a lot of projects at the patrol level with the patrol commanders. And then obviously getting the grant is a plus for us and continuing to build on. Those problems in each of our patrol teams are reported out, and if we need to, they are on their weeklies that are reported to me and the captain over patrol. And if we need to address those on our weekly OPSTAT meetings, we do that. But again, that's just being more engaging with community and building those community partnerships through problem solving, and being better documenting things in the future. The King Street Safety Plan is ongoing. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. A couple of big changes last year was changing the blocking off the parking on King Street early on, back and forth. We've come to a good plan with that. But moving in the future, Mr. Mayor, Council, we're still working with Neighborhood and Business Services to make that more aesthetically pleasing. So we're continuous to work through that. We've had a couple of meetings recently about that, about what can we do to make this, to keep beautifying our city, but at the same time, keeping the public safe with that King Street Safety Plan. We are still running that Thursday through Saturday, and on the major holidays and or like Halloween, those type of things on King Street, it would draw large crowds. The last one there, the flooding mitigation, life safety priorities. We had no major injuries, no deaths in 2022 or 2023. We have had a lot of flooded out vehicles and some complaints about getting better. I think with every rainstorm or every hurricane, I'm stressing to our teams to get better with the pre-deployment of barricades. Sometimes we do run out of officers and we run out of barricades, depending on the situation. But year after year, I just want the community and the public safety committee to know that we are committed to that, to the flooding mitigation and saving lives with that, and putting out signage. We moved the TNT boards to the crosstown and James Island connector when we know we're going to have these significant events, and or we do deploy the barricades to those known locations that will be a problem. I want to get better with it every year, or we want to get better with it every year, and just know again that we're committed to getting that right. And that's all I have for this morning.
Any questions on this slide, Mr. Mayor?
So, yes, DC Thompson, regarding the King Street Safety Plan, could you give your review of its success? Is it working? Do we have any numbers or statistics to show that? And then secondly, or maybe as a part of it, I've heard comments that yes, there's not as much bad actors on King Street itself, but our efforts have just forced them to move a block or so away, and we're not addressing the bad actors, within close proximity, even though they're not on King Street. If you don't mind addressing that, I would appreciate it.
So I don't have a lot of the statistics in front of me, but I will tell you that yes, we still have crime on King Street. We are we are not letting up with our resources down there. There's been a couple of questions that we pull officers off of King Street for different details. That's not the case. We will move around resources from other areas of the department to cover special events or whatever we need to do. We'll remain committed to those numbers on those weekend plans down there. The crowds are continuing to grow. There's just a lot of people down there. We do have the occasional aggravated assault with some of the fights on King Street. We saw 2 shootings this year off the top of my head, and one was in a parking lot, a block off of King Street, and then the other was over on Ann Street. But reducing the violent crime, like I said earlier, is the main goal down there. And I've, in my opinion, having the number of officers that we could, one, engage with the public, but also be visible, highly visible on all of the street corners and streets down there has been very successful. I will tell you that the parking situation, bagging the meters, has freed up our officers so that we can go a block or 2 east or west off King Street to address exactly what you're saying. And yes, it does push it off of King Street into some of the parking garages, some of those different areas, but we've been very successful. We've had many weekends where we've had numerous arrests for guns down there and other drugs and things like that. I would say the majority arrests are public disorderly conduct. Without having numbers in front of me, and the weekly reports that come out, we do have a lot of those arrests. But again, in my opinion, I believe the safety plan is successful. Do we have one or two issues here and there? Yes, we do. But again, just knowing that we stay committed to, we adjusting our resources, adding more resources, doing what we need to do to prevent. I think in my mind, I want zero crime there. And I think we all have to have that goal.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can add to what Dustin is saying, to your point about not being addressed on the side streets, majority of the narcotics and gun arrests are not happening on King Street. They are happening in the parking garages and off in the other parking lots, not associated directly with King Street. So just want to add some context to that. And the number of gun arrests that they're getting on a weekly basis, I mean, they're averaging almost 3 to 4 gun arrests a week down there associated with this CBD. So just to add context to the conversation. Most of those are not happening on King Street, but on the side streets.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both.
Any further comments, Councilman Shealy, Councilman Brady? I want to start with something a little bit different on the flooding mitigation. When we had these streets that are flooding during these particularly king tides, is there any coordination with any of our other partners? I'm specifically mentioning either MUSC or the College of Charleston or the Citadel Public Safety for their collaboration with streets that need to be blocked off. Specifically, I just personal experience was a Sunday. It was a high tide right around the noon hour, and it was Ashley Avenue, and it was one of those natural floods, and the street needed to be closed off. And that's right in the heart of MUSC. Then I just thought it would be pretty wise if we had some coordination with the MUSC Public Safety. Let them go out and shut that street down. That's within their campus. And I presume that would be also true along some other routes within the College of Charleston campus as well. Have we thought about doing something along those lines?
They normally depend on us to close those streets off, just because we have the barricades, we have the more officers to do that. We have had discussions throughout the year of these other agencies getting involved. But normally, to answer your question, it falls back on the city of Charleston to handle those roadway closures. We do have a couple of citizens around Ashley Avenue, Cannon Park, that we've given them a block of barricades and signage that they put out. We all know the Cannon Park floods all the time, and they will pull them out there for us to help us out. So again, thank you to the public for doing that, because a lot of times, if it's a rain bomb that we weren't expecting, we're a little bit behind the curve, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to bring in more resources because it was just an unknown event, and we're also riding calls and doing other things, and so some of the times when they need to be closed off like that, and it looks like we failed. It was just unknown. It was unknown by the National Weather Service, and it was unknown by us that we were going to get 4 to 5 inches of rain, which would make Ashley Avenue flood. Normally on the king tides, it won't make its way down there unless we have major rainfall on top of the tide for that particular area. But I welcome anybody to help out with deploying barricades. I'll tell you that we want to, like I said earlier, we want to get better at it. We've looked at other ways and discussed it with council and with different groups about having arms. This is not a new conversation, but having arms that come down automatically to close roadways. A lot of different ideas. A lot of those are very expensive. So I know that was a long-winded question, but it normally falls on us at the city police department to get those roadways closed off.
Well, I just think if it is available to you, I would just take one last thing off your plate regarding some of these streets. It is somewhat interesting. Lifelong Charlestonians, you can tell, understand when they see that water puddling up on a sunny day. That's not friendly water. I just am amazed, particularly with the out-of-state license tags. They plow through that water. I can only imagine what that car's gonna look like in a couple of weeks or months or whatever. But if you could partner, I'm just a suggestion. I mean, they are there. The public safety folks for MUSC and the College of Charleston, they're there. And if we had some level of coordination, that maybe help you guys out just to some extent. Just a suggestion. That's my personal observation of what I've seen from time to time. On the statistics that you showed us earlier with weapons and drugs, if you can break that down for the side street, I guess, that's sort of a broad term, but as you talked about what happens on the areas outside of King Street at nighttime, if there is a way of breaking those numbers down, I think that would be beneficial for the public as well.
Yes, sir. That'll work, because like most of those happen in parking garages and
Yeah.
people ordering, so we can have that broken down.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this slide from the committee? Okay. Next.
We got a couple more to go through, traffic. Go ahead, Dustin, I'm sorry about that.
All right, we're moving on to traffic. Traffic did a lot this past year, and the biggest takeaway to take out of the annual report is that, we handled the City of Charleston Police Department 7,258 collisions, and that was only up from 158 last year. And while that's still a bunch of collisions that we worked, it shows that our efforts are working off and are paying off for our selected traffic enforcement that we are doing. Just setting officers out there in those hot spots to try to curb these accidents from occurring. But once again, that's roughly only 13 a month that we accrued in the last year. Obviously, with the number of tours coming to Charleston, more businesses coming to Charleston, we are getting more vehicular traffic than in the past. So this has not really been surprising to us. We are trying to find ways to work around it, and having our teams out there enforce those hot spots and just people making aware of, bad traffic behavior is one of those educational pieces that we are working on. Any questions with traffic?
Any committee members with a question about traffic? Okay. Next slide.
Opioids. Miss Shelby August is our coordinator for this. She's done a fantastic job in the last year and a half here. The three main focuses that she's been working on under the COSIP grant was providing the harm reduction kits to the general public. They've hosted training classes for these. They've given out the kits, and the kits have worked. She's also working on the deflection to service training for law enforcement agencies. And the last one is that cross-jurisdictional communication through the ACT force, and that's reporting the statistical information out, which Shelby does an amazing job. She's very heavily involved in that and has really taken on the challenge of communicating with our outside partners and resources that it's really hard to do sometimes. And she's taken the lead on that, and she's gotten everyone to participate. So now that sharing of data is very vibrant in terms of the accessibility and the enthusiasm that she has to do that.
And I understand that we coordinate significantly with other agencies, not just law enforcement agencies, but at Minnesota University as well on through this grant.
That is correct. And once again, that's something that Ms. Shelby's taken on, and she has such a passion for it. And like I said, use the term vibrant for that, but she's willing to host those trainings and to reach out to people and truly help them out.
Okay. Any questions? And I also know that if you're interested, you can go, there's an online method to find out by geographical area where the most calls are for these opioid responses. Is that right as well?
I am not familiar with that, so I don't want to promise anything that is not there, but I can find that out for you.
Okay. All right. Next slide, please, then.
Community outreach. Community outreach has done a lot this past year. Some of the biggest takeaways is that they're still partnering with Serve and Connect for Greg's Groceries. Last year was a pretty big year for us. We hosted 2 different national nights out. One was with the East Side community, and the other one was the River Dogs. We're still doing Coffee with the Cop, our open house meetings, the Alice training, And our biggest takeaways are two community centers at Robert Mills Manor and Gaston Green. And once again, that's partnering with the community to have our officers in there. But we're also doing more than just having officers in there. For one of our back to school bashes, I know that they had a barber there and they were able to give haircuts courtesy of the barbers. They gave the kids back to school haircuts for free. We provided backpacks for them. There's still game nights out there. So it's, making these connections with the community at such a young level. That's really important to show them that we are meant to be there. We're on everyone's side. We're there to help. And we do have a great response to the local communities that we serve within those two community centers. Any questions for community outreach?
Any questions, committee members? Thank you, sir.
All right, Citizens Academy. This is something that we started about 3 years ago. Last year was a big year for us. We had 38 citizens attend in all of 2022. While that doesn't seem like a lot, it's a big commitment for every citizen to attend. You're coming on a Wednesday night. It's a big dedication, and we take them through what it takes to be a Charleston City police officer, whether it's going through a use of force scenario training, de-escalation scenarios. They do our virtual machine, which is putting in some simulation training, traffic stops, fingerprinting, talking about constitutional issues and community policing. And they also get a chance to meet our commanders one-on-one. And we do have a day at the end where it is our big overall scenario day with our special operations division. And they kind of see how everything works in conjunction with one another.
And
Questions for Citizens Academy?
if I may add one thing, Tony, if you don't mind, this is a very important piece. It's something that we plan on building on and reaching out. I am working with CASIUM with actually taking these forms, the different topics to the communities that can't make it through the whole 8 weeks, because this is educating the community on who we are as an agency and not necessarily learning through the lens of watching whichever news outlet you watch or seeing some other agency in a different part of the country, and getting the civics back to who Charleston Police is, our policies, our hiring, our standards, our education. So I want to highlight that. And that will be a big portion of our platform going forward as far as educating the community and soliciting for engagement. So just FYI.
Any questions? Okay, move on.
Recruiting and retention. This is one of the, I'd say, our quote important slides out of all this. And this just shows the great work that our team is doing. We had 3 great years of hiring. In 2020, we hired 53 officers. In 2021, we had 49 officers. And in 2022, we set a record of hiring 54 officers. And as everyone knows, recruiting is extremely tough, not just in law enforcement, but within every employer probably throughout the United States right now, coming off the heels of COVID and everything else that's going on. But with our team setting a record of 54 officers last year, it's just pretty phenomenal. And once again, they're just doing a great job. And while that number might seem low, we do have a higher percentage that does apply to us, but we're very scrupulously in who we actually employ here. We have high standards, both ethically and morally, because these are going to be the officers that are serving our community, and we're not just going to fill the numbers just to fill the numbers. And as Chief Reynolds said, he'd rather go short on officers and hiring someone that doesn't fit our mold, and that's something that we will always continue to go on down the road.
And one note, it's not added on the slide. So currently, as far as vacancies, we're probably sitting at a little above 10% with about 45, 46 vacancies. And that is about an average that is well below the national standards of what other agencies are experiencing. But like Captain Cretella said, that's not due to the lack of applicants actually applying. We are very selective on who we bring into the organization. So just want to add that for context. And Event, you had a question.
Yeah, but you got a long way to catch up with Chief Courier. So
Well,
he set a new standard for you guys. I don't know if you can keep up with him.
but everybody who doesn't love firemen.
When you get to 0%, let us know. We'll applaud that.
Yeah.
Any questions about retention and hiring? How often do you have a class come in?
So we have 3 classes, and if I can move to the next slide, this might answer your question. So we're moving into training. So we have 3 police corps classes every year, January, June, and September. And they're strategically designed because that's when we have seen the best ratio of applicants come in, especially June after, students graduate from college. That's just a perfect time to grab them in that, police corps class there. Because once we initially hire them on, they have a 12-week orientation program that they have to do before they even go to the academy. So they're getting the academy and more, which is our Charleston expectations, as Chief Walker said, that we expect out of our officers, whether you're the newest officer or you're the chief of police here. And it's talking about our standards that we have within the Charleston Police Department. So we do have 3 classes a year. And last year, like I said, we had the record number of 54 officers. In addition to that, we have different lateral transfers coming in, and they do hit these police corps when the time does allow for that. Any questions for training?
Anybody? Seeing none?
All right, we have 2 more slides left, and these 2 are important slides, and I want you to think that they're at the end, that they're not important, but they really are. So we talk about our Citizens Police Advisory Council. This is really geared up in the last 2.5 years. And the biggest takeaway from last year was they started a community educational series. And as Paul Tamburino said, that we're doing such great things here at the Charleston Police Department. We're doing things with such important topics that we need to bring this out to the community. And what a better way to do it than a webinar. So we had 3 webinars last year. The first one was talking about the Central Business District with the changes in the different enforcement that was going on. The second one was the Open Data Dashboard. And that was talking about the way that we keep data, what's publicized on the intranet, and what the community has access to. And the last one was our de-escalation and use of force techniques. And we talked about all the classes that officers go through, what's expected of them, gave some different scenarios, and provided a question and answer session afterwards. And we will continue these in 2024, working in conjunction again with CPAC. Any questions with CPAC?
Anybody? Questions?
All right. To close up-
Are we still getting good attendance for those meetings, and are we fully
It's
represented?
it's been night and day since we made the adjustments, Councilman. So they are engaged. It's been a night and day difference
Okay,
with the attendance.
good.
And lastly is our law enforcement neighborhood support lens. As you know, this is our police foundation. They've done a lot for us over the last 1.5 years. And once again, these pictures just illustrate around Christmas time, bringing, these gifts to the community that wouldn't have a Christmas if it wasn't for them, and just a generosity. But they also help out with Hispanic Heritage Month. They've done cookouts for the officers, participated in Halloween How, and also done senior living bingo night where, go to senior homes, they play bingo, and they also hand out different reward cards there, whether it's to McDonald's, the gas station, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, and the seniors really appreciate it. It's just a little bit of extra, maybe money in their pocket, but they also play with the officers, and it kind of gives a chance to the officers to relax and, have some good conversation. And in a nutshell, this is our 2022 annual report. It's been condensed down a lot, it's been condensed down a lot, but if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them now.
Anybody?
And Councilman, if I just add, and that is it, but with everything that's been said, we're not above approach. I tell our guys that all the time, and that goes for this body and the citizens. If you see something or you have suggestions that gonna make us better, we welcome your feedback. The biggest thing is getting the engagement and the collaboration, and getting people feeling comfortable that they can come forward and at least talk to us about this agency and how we provide a service. So I want to close with that and open the floor up for any suggestions, anything moving forward from this group.
All right, thank you for that report. Appreciate it. Mr. Mayor.
Well, if I get accused of being your biggest cheerleader, that would be okay with me. And thank you for closing on that note, Cheeto, because I think Charleston Police Department has the culture of that this is a journey and not a destination, and we can always try to improve ourselves. But that being said, I'm very proud of y'all. I think it's an excellent report. Violent crime was down, professional standards reports were down, drug and gun arrests were up. I view that as a sign that we're doing a better job at getting guns and drugs off the street. At the same time, our community outreach, particularly assisted by Lynn's Foundation, was up. And the Citizens Academy participation, the hiring the most number of officers in 1 year. So you got to continue to focus on that. I know you are, because that's a continuing effort to attract with the requirements that we have, people to join in public safety for a profession is not an easy thing today. But overall, I think it's a great report. I commend you and I thank you for y'all's guardianship of our citizens in our city. I think you're doing a great job. Keep it up, all of you.
Councilmember Shealy, any other comment? Councilmember Brady?
Nope, just really appreciate the information.
Mayor, I may have to arm wrestle who's going to be the biggest cheerleader for the police department, because I've always sung their praises. My involvement with them over 40 plus years. They've set a standard a long time ago. And I've mentioned this to Chief Walker earlier this morning. Always have a high level of excellence and professionalism. Has been my experience always. And so I think of continuing that through our various chiefs, and we'll look forward to that, maintaining that level of standard and care on that. And so you guys, always thank you for the transparency with this report, some good numbers for us to chew on. And we'll look forward to where we are with the internal audit in November.
Yes, sir.
That not being any further business, I think, Mr. Mayor, we're kind of behind on our schedule, and we got a real estate meeting at 3. So we will adjourn, and there'll be no further business. Thank you all.